Welcome to the CBP Spring Virtual Conference. Wipfli is proud to be a CBP partner and presenting sponsor. I'm TJ O'Neill, also known as the Thirsty CPA, and help lead our firm's craft brewery team. We offer a full lineup of solutions, including accounting and tax, digital strategies, business advisory, and strategic planning services. Our firm's been working with breweries, wineries, and distilleries for decades. So whether you're a startup or looking to expand, we just might surprise you with a new perspective to transform your business. You can learn more at wipfli.com. Remember, that's Wipfli, W-I-P-F-L-I, not Wipfly. I hope you're enjoying the conference. Cheers.
Okay, I believe I'm live. Hello, everybody. And I hope everyone's enjoying the virtual conference thus far. I'm happy to be here to talk a bit about startup mentality and specifically some of the things that I've seen when working with startup teams on how to build better and faster. Now, of course, we work in a varied industry, and not all of us on here are necessarily tech startups, but a lot of the principles that we'll cover today not only are applicable to, of course, tech startups, but hopefully you can find how you can apply some of them in your own business, whether that be a brewery or a tap room or anything in between. Now, of course, before I get in, feel free to leave any comments in the chat. And if there's time, then of course we'll cover them as well. And any questions I'll try to answer as well after the presentation. I'm also happy to share the presentation with anyone who is interested. So without further ado, let's start a bit about, just a tiny bit about me, just so you know who I am and the story behind some of the topics that we'll cover. So I've been in the beer industry for over a decade now. Started off doing branding and design work for a brewery in Ontario, Canada. That, of course, over time expanded to include can and packaging design. Learned a lot about what the beer production process looks like and all the nitty-gritty work and the gargantuan effort that's required to actually bring a product to market. Over time, that ended up turning into a little startup that I co-founded, also in Ontario, called Kegshoe. What we do is we offer keg tracking and CRM software for breweries. That's currently used by hundreds of breweries in, I think, over 40 countries now around the world. And most recently, we launched a new product called Sippo, which is a digital menu solution. And that's also used by tap rooms and breweries all around the world. So it's been super, super exciting to see sort of the kind of work grow. In addition to a lot of this beer work, I have worked in high growth startups, so leading teams in companies primarily in Germany. And this spans from consumer products, working on apps with millions of users, to sort of rapid delivery products as well. So I have had the chance, I've been very fortunate to be able to work with very, very talented teams sort of across the world working on super exciting projects. And I think the thing that summarizes what I love to do and the teams I love to work with is to be able to craft products and experiences that people love. And I think that all of us on the call can probably relate to this kind of feeling about what we do and why we do it. And along the way, what I've seen is that there have been sort of tools and tricks that we've been able to use to help our teams build faster and, of course, build better, and particularly build in a way that is human focused. And we'll cover it in 3 sections. So I sort of classified it as breathe, listen, and act. On the breathe side, how can we slow down as teams to make space for collaboration and creativity? On the listening, how can we improve our craft by listening to those who care most about what we do. And of course, on acting, how can we help our teams chart a clear course to drive fast but impactful change? So let's start with breathing. Sometimes not slowing down is slowing us down. And with the concept of breathing, it's how do we really make the time and space for our teams to be creative, collaborative, and efficient? I think it's quite easy to get caught up in the rat race and get caught up in projects and not take a step back and review what we're all working on as a team. And we've seen a few different ways that we've been able to implement at Kegshoe and at other teams to actually take that time to breathe and slow down. And there's two ways that we've done that. There are others as well, but the two that I'd like to cover are hackathons, or basically taking the time to explore new ways of how we work and the kind of work that we do. And then on conferences. So how can we foster these bottom-up discussions and connections and have our teams talk in ways that maybe are outside of the regular flow? So let's start with, taking the time to quote unquote hack. And really, how do we provide some time for our teams to be incredibly creative, to work on hidden gems? And there's two elements that we've tried to implement. One are hack days, and another what we call our 1% days. So let's start with hack days. Now, what we've seen is sort of the term hackathon or hack days can be misinterpreted to maybe seem as if it's malicious, but hackathons are actually very, very incredible ways to bring your team together and to work on exciting and creative topics that maybe otherwise wouldn't come up in day-to-day work. And the way that it works is it's supposed to be a company-wide session. And what we've seen is that it works best when you give it enough time for projects to actually come up and ideation to take place, but also for the ideas to be acted on. And so the way that it works is anyone who partakes in the hackathon, and we recommend to incorporate as many people as possible. It doesn't have to just be, for example, engineers. It can be sales, marketing. Everybody comes together and forms groups. And what they're able to do is they're able to come up with ideas or topics that they would like to try out. And this is where the quote unquote hack comes together. It's like, what are things that we can sort of like hack together or MacGyver together in a very short amount of time? And the restrictions are few. So the topic can be about anything with an asterisk. And that asterisk in most cases is it has to be, at least when we do it at Kegshoe, has to be related to either the work that we already do, keg tracking, sales, etc., or something that relates to the industry that we're in. And then the other parameter that is important to set is that the project must be in a presentable and complete form by the end of the hack-a-day or hackathon. And so whether that's 2 days, 3 days, a week, that's up to you. And this is a great way to be able to have your teams come up with ideas that otherwise they might not get the chance to do. Maybe there's just an itch that the team has been wanting to scratch, or an idea that they've really wanted to test out. And this is a fantastic way to foster that collaboration and really incubate new ideas that otherwise might not come up. The other thing that we use are plus 1% days. And this is as much as a rest day or a break day, as much as it is a way of thinking or a mentality. And the mentality really is, how can we make whatever we're working on, or our processes, or our the way that we do things. How can we make it 1% better? That's it. How can we just make it just a tiny bit better? And these can be team level days. These can be personal days. I've seen some people who just take a couple hours a week just to work on their little 1% ideas. And it really is, okay, maybe there's a process that you're following day in and day out. Maybe you're a sales rep and you're trying to input all your data into a spreadsheet. Or maybe you are downloading sales data from another platform. These little 1% work segments can allow you to maybe build that automation that helps you from having to copy and paste every time. Or maybe you set up a Zapier and have systems talk to one another. These are really, really great ways to have these low-hanging fruit efficiencies get brought in that, again, otherwise might not get the chance to see the light of day. And like I mentioned, it can also be just full mentality. And what I've really appreciated is when people actually take this mentality and apply it to everything that they do. And it's like, really, how can we make everything just 1% better? And this is where, if you can do this on a regular basis, the compound interest, so to speak, on it is incredible. The next are unconferences. And I know, the idea of doing a conference within a company might seem a bit strange, but this is a really, really fantastic way to bring people together and to have them share the kind of topics that they want to talk about. Because sometimes you'll see it's easy to get lost in a top-down, hey, these are the topics that we're going to talk about, and it ends there. And really what you want to do is you want to get that bottom-up conversation. You want to see what are the things that people are really curious about. What are the things that people want to ideate with other people in the team. And unconferences are a great way to do that. Now, if you haven't heard the term unconference, it really is the concept of a conference, but breaking it all apart. And so you really start the day off with no topics planned whatsoever. No topics. What you do have is you have time slots in certain areas, let's say certain rooms, and you allow your group to come up with the topics themselves. So how do you run one? You set a date and time for the unconference. You create a visible timetable with breakout room and time slots. And you'll see here's an image of an example unconference. And it can literally be as simple as an empty slot. And maybe you'll have Post-it notes for people to write down their ideas. People will write down the ideas. Now, the concept is simple. If you write down the idea, that means you're leading that sort of conference topic in that conference room. And you place your, as a lead, you place your idea onto the schedule. And then the conference starts. Now, the other thing that's important with these unconferences is movement is allowed. So people are able to sort of vote with their feet, or not even vote, but explore different topics. What I've seen work really, really well is when the topics themselves are a chance for the leads to ask questions or to garner feedback, or even just to have a conversation pit. And the kind of ideas or topics that get brought up almost always, I think, will surprise you in a very, very positive way. Next is listening. So how do you improve your craft? By listening to those who care, and particularly listening to those who you make your products for. And the concept here is we can't really innovate if we don't know who we're innovating for or how it's helping. And so how can we get closer to the people who actually experience what we're crafting? And there's two things here that I'd also like to recommend. One is a day in the life, and then the other is seeking feedback, proactively especially. So starting off with the day in the life, how can we better understand the problems that your customers are facing? And one way to do that, and there's myriad of ways, but the high level concept is how do you put yourself in the shoes of someone who is going to experience the product. And whether this product is a tech product, it's an app, maybe it's a website, maybe it's the beer that you're selling, right? And putting yourself into the mentality of what is it like to be an end user or a customer. So one way is shadowing sessions. It's a chance for you to witness a normal day in the life of, let's say, a customer. For Kegshoe, that would be us shadowing potentially somebody who works on the production floor as they're scanning kegs, or a delivery driver as they're out delivering their kegs. When you do the shadowing session, the big thing is to almost be a fly on the wall. You're not there to necessarily ask questions. You're taking notes. And of course, you're trying to understand the why. Like, why is this element difficult? Is this always how it's done? Why is it done this way? You're really there to just take everything in. And what's great about this is it gives you the opportunity to see things from a new perspective, and find solutions from the kind of new understandings that you've been able to garner. Now you'll see I've also included an image. So back when I was doing can and packaging design, I would try to do this by, in this case, I would go to the liquor store and I'd try and see, okay, how is our product actually being displayed? What are things that we can see about this? Are we on, like, is the shelf placement right? How do we compare against the brands that are next to us? What are the staff at the liquor store actually doing with the boxes that we're providing? So you'll see in the second row there, in the second shelf, that the boxes were placed on their side. What does that mean? Like, should we redesign the boxes? Is the typography large enough? Are we able to stand out? What elements of the can, for example, are visible above the cardboard? These are all things that, unless you actually go and try, you won't be able to find out. Next is seeking feedback. And so asking yourself, how can people actually reach out to provide feedback? Who's acting on it? And importantly, are we making it easy to collect, especially the tough feedback, and are we embracing it? And what's really, really important is to embrace tough feedback, seek it out, because that's what ultimately, if it feels scary or you don't want to hear it, then it's probably what you need to hear the most, and probably what you need to act on as well. And there's two things here that I'd recommend is, one, ensuring that there are ample feedback touch points. And second is making sure that those feedback, or the feedback that is provided, can be acted on. So when you think about your own business, how easy is it for people to reach out and to provide feedback? Are there support numbers? Are there website forms? Are there banners? Do you proactively reach out or take note anytime anyone leaves feedback on social media? Do you send out surveys? Do you make it easy to receive feedback? And if you don't know the answer, then potentially, or chances are the answer is maybe it's not easy enough. And on the other side is, with the feedback that you are collecting, where does it go? Is it easy to see the kind of feedback? Can everybody see it so that people who are working on those areas can act on it? Is the feedback shared openly across the company, including the tough feedback? What kind of actions have been taken? And is that actually shared with the end user and the customers? And then how do you track your own progress? If it's going through support, are you tracking NPS? There's so many things to pay attention to. But one thing that I've seen consistently is, if you're noticing, your team is noticing that you're getting the same kind of feedback time and time again, where there's smoke, there's likely fire. And so those are the kind of things that are worth really, really, one, embracing, but two, acting on. And last is acting. So how do we chart a clear course to drive fast and impactful change? And as a team or as an organization, how can you pave the way for unified action towards internal goals? Like, how can you really align all your teams, or even if it's just one team, to work together on only the elements that are most impactful? And here, again, there are two elements. There's aligning your teams, rallying them around key targets, and making sure that there's an effective way for their progress to be shared, and prioritizing. So knowing what to work on, especially in a world where there's a million ideas. And if you take some of the feedback from, for example, your customers, you'll have even more ideas. Or if you do shadowing sessions, you'll have all of these ideas. So how do you prioritize what to work on? And so starting off with, alignment here. So rallying the team around unified targets and clearing the path to success. And here, what I recommend is trying to find a framework for aligning your organization or your team and making it very clear what the team is working on, why they're working on it, and how the teams are, or the individual team or the individual themselves are contributing to that goal. Now, the ones that I've seen most frequently are OKRs, especially at tech startups. But there's also KPIs and others that we'll cover. So for OKRs, it stands for objectives and key results. This is it really is more than just setting an objective and some key results. It really is an entire process, and there's plenty of books. I think if you just do a quick Google, you'll find plenty that cover the topic in granular detail. But it does require the entire organization to adopt sort of this framework or these principles. They're generally planned every quarter, with objectives being the what. Like, what are we working on? What are we trying to change? And the key results are the how. Like, how are we changing it? What are we going to see if we actually make those changes? It's important that the progress is tracked regularly and communicated accordingly. And the big thing with objectives is being able to focus on opportunity spaces instead of solutions. So especially if you have data-driven objectives or key results, you're focusing on what is the final impact and less so on how we get there, which allows plenty of space for the teams to be creative and find sort of their way of getting there. There's also KPIs and other frameworks. So KPIs, I'm sure we've all heard of them, key performance indicators. Other companies use their own goal-setting frameworks. So Brewdog, for example, I believe uses top fives. Shopify uses what they call GSD cycles. I'll let you search GSD cycles. It's a really, really great framework, and it really is quite motivating. But what's important is looking at all the frameworks that are available and finding the one that's best suited for your organization. Because it depends on your team size. It depends on how quickly you work on projects and the kind of projects that you're working on. But this can be applied, and I've seen it applied from tech companies, like I mentioned before, to logistics companies, to breweries and beyond. And last but not least is prioritization. And so how, with all of these ideas, now your team is working creatively, you've done some hackathons, you've had unconferences, you have so many things that you want to work on. How do you figure out what is most important? And especially how it aligns to potentially, for example, your team objectives, your company goals. And what I'm going to recommend here, this is just a very high level recommendation, is to look at prioritization frameworks. And so I'll use RICE as an example. This is quite popular in the world of product management in tech. And it's a very simple prioritization framework. The idea is that you take your list of ideas and you grade each idea against 4 criteria. Reach. How far reaching is this solution idea? Does it impact all of my customers or all of my users, or just a portion? Let's say you're working on an app and there's an idea that is only applicable to English speakers, or maybe only to French speakers. That could be just a subset of your entire user base. So take that into consideration. Or maybe it's in the world of brewing, maybe it's an idea for sales to improve, let's say, can sales. Now, again, that's only a portion of the sales that goes through. So you would apply that to the reach criteria. Impact. So this is where you align the idea with the overall goal or target. And so how much will this idea affect the metric that we're trying to move? And here you can use any scale. I'm just suggesting, for example, something like between 1 and 3. Next is confidence. How confident are you that this is actually going to have the impact or the reach that you're expecting? And this is a percentage typically. I mean, if it's 0%, then the idea probably shouldn't be there. So let's say anywhere between 25 and 100. And last is effort. How difficult is it going to be to actually implement this idea? And the calculation is quite simple. You multiply RIC and you divide by E. And what you'll end up with is a score at the end. That's sort of the RICE score. You can then sort all of your ideas against that final score. And you'll have, and again, this isn't supposed to make your decisions for you, but what it does is it facilitates decision making, and it sort of forces you to think about all of the elements that would be required to make an idea a successful one. What's important to note as well is that other frameworks exist. There are so many frameworks out there. If you look for prioritization frameworks on Google, you will find hundreds, if not thousands. But they can also be created, right? They can be tailored to your own prioritization or way of thinking. The most important thing is to ensure that the decision parameters are clearly defined, that everybody understands how these parameters are set. And yeah, the world is your oyster. There's nothing stopping you from having as many or as few as you'd like. So to summarize, there are quite a few ways that you can improve the way your organization or your team runs, and quite a few ways that you can embrace some of the methodologies that are often seen at startups or tech companies. And it really comes down to breathing, listening, and acting, right? Whether that's finding time for your team to be creative through hackathons or unconferences, whether it's really listening or embracing feedback and collecting feedback and trying to understand your end user and making sure that your team knows where it's heading and why it's heading there. If you have any other questions about any of the topic that I presented, feel free to reach out. So yeah, let's stay in touch. My contact information is here, adrian@kegshoe.ca. If you want to find out more about the work that we're doing at Kegshoe, you can find out more at kegshoe.ca for keg tracking and CRM. And if you want to find out more about SIPO, our digital menu solution, we actually have a CBP offer in place right now that gives you 30% off. And you can find out more at sipo.io/CBP. And of course, I mean, we're a small team that works in Canada working on these topics. And so apologies for my Canadian accent. With that, cheers and thank you very much.